Hi, welcome back. In the last session, we have understood about the views, how to create a view, where you are going to create the view, how can you write the endpoint which will redirect to the view, which will call the view. So these are the few things which we have discussed in the last session. Now we will see in detail, like if I'm creating a view, there would be a lot of PHP code which would be written inside either in the route or in the view. So is it the right place? For example, suppose if I am submitting a form, I would need to get the payload and save somewhere inside the database. So now is this the right place to write your PHP code? Maybe not. This is not the right place. Should we write some data inside the form? Let's create another view and should we write inside that? So that is also not the right place. So where are we going to write the actual code, right? But let me show you some PHP code. Like you would be thinking that what is the PHP code which we would require to accept and all, right? So let's understand that thing first. We'll see the problem and then we'll bring the solution. So I have executed my server PHP artisan serve command. Now I believe you guys would be like remembering it that okay, we have to run the server first. So we had created two endpoints. One was the sign up, which was showing the register view. Let's go to that endpoint. Here I'll open sign up page and I'll input some data. So once I'm clicking on register, it will go to the next endpoint, that is post, right? Now we need to get the payload. Payload is the data which will be submitted from the form, right? If you inspect the browser and go to the network tab, let me submit, click on this register button, the form will be submitted. And here you see a request is sent to the register to endpoint, right? So now let's explore this request. This is the request URL. Then the method is post. We know because we have created the endpoint with the post method. Status code is 200. That means the request submission is successful, right? Now if you explore it a bit, it will also show you the response headers, but then scroll more, request headers. Okay, the newer version is containing the payload in a separate tab. So this is the payload, right? Payload means the data inside the form which is now sent inside the request as a form body. So here it is submitting a token. We never created a token. It was because of the CSRF token, right? So the field which we had created was email and it is carrying the data. Now this data needs to be captured inside your application. How will you capture it, right? So if it was core PHP, I would have written $_post method and I would have used these global arrays $_post and I would have written email, right? But we are working in Laravel, so this is not the right way to do it. So here we are going to use the request class, right? Whole of the Laravel is created in object oriented. So they have provided you classes. You can use those classes, their methods to get the data. So here we are going to use the request class, right? Request class. So let's use the request class here. A request $request. Now few members who if you have not ever done any work on some framework or object oriented programming, right? Or you are not aware of the dependency injection concept, it would be a bit strange for you that why I am writing up the request as a parameter who is going to supply the object over here, right? Normally you would have created the object like this in PHP, request object equals new request, right? But we are doing it in a different way. Here Laravel brings the feature of dependency injection, right? Dependency injection means that the dependency would be injected, right? Laravel service container will inject the dependency wherever required. So here I require it as a parameter, right? So I will get this request object. So Laravel container will see that okay, because the code is requesting for the request object, right? It will create an object and will pass the reference to this $request variable. So I need to include the request in the namespace. This one you will use, right? We have added it in the namespace, right? So I have this request object, right? Now let's debug what data are we going to get submitted. So here, whenever you want to get the payload, all the payload of your request, so use the request object, call the all method, $request all, right? $request all. So this is going to give you all the data, all the payload of the request, right? Let's save this, go back. I'm going to refresh this page. The post request will be resubmitted. So here you see, now it is returning me token and email. It is actually, we are debugging it, right? So it is giving the token and the email. I had only submitted email. Where is it coming? Where is it getting the token? So token is coming from the CSRF token. So now in this case, here we are going to fetch the email only. Now how will you fetch the email? You can use the method input, right, and pass the parameter email. This will fetch the specific key and its value. So here you have passed the key, that this is the key for which I want the value from the request. Let's go back, refresh it, and you will see it's returning you the email only. All right. Okay. So now writing this code over here might not be good. So where should I go and write this data, right? Where should I go and write this data? Like fetching the payload, saving the data inside the database. So here we introduce a new concept, that is controller, right? We'll bring a new concept, that is controller. Controller would be the place where the HTTP layer code would be written. So whenever the request is coming, it will be sent to the controller. Inside the controller, you can do all the code work, right, related to the fetching the payload, saving it inside the database, or filtering it up. Anything, whatever you want to do can be done inside the controller. We will see more layers. We'll see the business logic to be written in a separate layer, database related transaction in a different layer, but as we advance in our course, right? So here we'll keep it simple. I want that this register, this submission should be created inside the controller. So what is this controller? It's again a class which will be accepting the HTTP request. So if you go to the app HTTP folder controllers, you get a controller class, right? This controller class is extending from the Laravel controller, right? So here in this class, you can write up all your methods. Fine. If there are few methods, I can write it over here. I mean, if I have couple of endpoints only, I can go and map them with the methods inside my controller class. But suppose if I'm getting a big project to be created where I will have users, products, customers, orders, payments, a lot of things, right? Then it is better to create separate controllers. First, we'll add one method over here. We'll create inside this controller only, and then we'll move it to a separate controller. So I'm going to write a new method, public function. Let's name it as show register, right? So this method I am creating to show the show register form, right? So this will be show register form and it will return a view. Second method I'll create which will accept the submission of the form. So here I'll say submit register form. That means all the code which you want to run when the form is submitted will go inside this method. Okay, so let's add some documentation for this also. Handle form submission, right? We'll see what to be returned from here. Probably we'll be returning up another view only from here, like a success view. Okay, so the view that I have to return from this show register is your view register, right? Let's return it from here. Now how to map this method show register with your endpoint sign up? Okay, how are you going to map this? So we'll remove this closure now, we don't need it. So here we'll pass the second parameter as the action. Now what action we are going to pass? We will give the name of the controller. So you will pass an array, and inside that we'll pass the name of the controller. Controller name is controller itself, which is inside the app HTTP controller class, right? So I'm going to pass the name of the controller class, and I will pass the second value as the name of the method show register. Right. So don't pass your parentheses, only the name need to be passed. So now you see your route is bit cleaner. You don't need to write all the logic over here. Route is now bit cleaner. Whenever the request is coming and it is matching, okay, is this route need to be called or the second one? So it will match, okay, which controller should I go and which method, right? So now similarly, you will write up the sign up for the post method also. One more important point here, you can write multiple endpoints with the same name, right? But their method should be different. There should be some difference in them. So here I'm writing the sign up as get method and sign up as a post method. So here controller will call, which method of the controller we need to call? Submit register form, right? So I'm going to call the submit register form, remove the parenthesis. Okay, we don't need this. All I need to do is I need to copy the name. Remember that because we are changing the endpoint path, right? So the name should be same because this name is what we have referenced inside our form, right? So no matter how many times you change it, it will automatically be updated inside the application. So let's remove this. Now my route file is bit cleaner. I have a get method route name, endpoint is sign up, and it will map to the show register. So let's go back to the browser, call the sign up. It is working. We can see the form, and now I'm going to submit some data. So where is this data going to go? It will come to this endpoint, right? And from there it will be routed to the submit register form. So that means I need a request object here. Okay, so now this request object is going to bring all the payload, all the information related to the request will be inside this object. What type of request it is, what is the method, what are the headers, what are the payload, everything can be fetched inside this from this object. So now I will be returning up a simple message. So let's first copy the email, capture the email, $request input email. Okay, and let's return up some message from here. I have not yet created a new view like we were discussing. I'll return a simple message from here. So call it like h4 thanks for registration, check your email, and then we can concatenate the $email. Okay, so this message would be returned. Let's save this, go back to the browser, submit it, register, and you can see it's returning up some message. Thanks for registration, check your email, test@test.com. Why have we made these changes? Why not all the information was kept inside the web.php, like creating an endpoint, writing some logic, returning the data from here? It would have been easy, but it won't not look good, right? Why are we using Laravel? We are using it so our code can be cleaner, right? It is giving us a lot of existing features, and we should utilize it in a standard way, better way, right? For large scale application development, you are going to use such frameworks, right? And when it is the large scale application development, you will find a lot of maintenance also, right? So when you have to come back to the maintenance, writing up hundreds of lines of code in your route file, putting the logic here, everything is here, it will create a lot of messy code, right? So better keep it standard. In the routes, just write your routes mapped with the controllers. Okay, that makes it easier. Okay, now suppose you have a lot of endpoints, right? A lot of endpoints, and if there are a lot of endpoints, means you have to write a lot of methods which are mapped with those endpoints, right? I want to make it cleaner. I want a separate registration controller, right? A controller which is only going to handle the registration part. That is a very good practice, that for a specific action you create a separate controller. Okay, one option is you copy this, you rename it, right? But Laravel has taken care of this. You are going to create a new controller, right? So let's learn one more command, php artisan make controller. PHP artisan make controller and give the name of the controller. So here I'm going to call it as register controller, right? Register controller, account controller, give it a name which is related to the action that you are creating. So register controller is created C, right? So inside this register controller, I can write both of those methods. Remove it from here and put it over here. Okay, so what is this register controller actually doing? Register controller is again a subclass of the controller, which is in which you have already written your code, right? So don't make any changes over here. Only the common code can be kept inside your parent class. This is the parent class, and now you have got your child class register controller, which is again actually a controller, and two methods are there. We need to make one change. Instead of controller, now I need to use register controller. Okay, so let's change this also, and we can remove this one. I don't need the request here. Right, don't handle your request inside the route file. Handle the request inside the controller, right? Inside your controller, like we are doing it over here. Okay, so let's refresh the page. This is my sign up page, submitting the data again, register, and now it is submitting the form. Form is submitted and this data is submitted. Response is thanks for registration, check your email, test@test.com, right? So we saw how to create a controller. Now we have understood some basic things about Laravel, that how to create a view, how to map that view with an endpoint, how to map a controller with the endpoint, and how to return some information from the controller, right? So if I write some idea, that how is my request working. So suppose you have the client, right, which I'll call as browser. So browser is making the request. A request would be appearing to the route file. From route, you should pass it to the controller, right? And from controller, now controller work is to check whether I need to fetch the data or I need to return the view, right? Whether I need to publish the data or fetch the data, and whether I need to return that data inside a view or not. Okay, sometimes you are requesting for some data, sometimes you are submitting the data, and the return value will be only a successful message, right? For example, I am registering up on some website. So what is they are going to return? They will only return us a message, you have registered successfully. Okay, might be they will send us a mail and all, right? But that is all in the background. So here client will make the request, it goes to the route file. From the route file, you will pass it to the controller, and from the controller you can pass the data inside the view. So view will be returned to the client again. Okay, so from here it is something like controller will return the response to the client, right? Controller will return the response to the client. So that's all for this session. We'll meet in the next session, understanding more about the controllers, the request and the response. From now onwards, we'll have some more detailed things, because it was initial sessions, just basic idea of MV model view controller was to be discussed. We have discussed the view and controller. Now we will discuss about models in our next session. Model would be related to the saving of the data, right? We'll have a quick look at models tomorrow, and then we will move further with the advanced part, like how to save the data, create tables and all other things. Thank you everyone.